Hello, this is Stan Norman. I am the host of the Lifework Podcast. I want to welcome all of our listeners back to the podcast. We've been on a little bit of a summer break for a couple of reasons. One, it's been summer, and there's been a lot of different things that have required us to pivot our attention elsewhere. But secondly, and probably more relevant to this podcast, is I lost my partner in crime, Ryan Putman, who has been so good to be my co-pilot in this ministry. Recently had a life work kind of moment where he felt the Lord redirecting him to return to the classroom at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in teaching and training pastors. And we're going to miss Ryan greatly. He was such a valuable member of the university community, of the broader Williams family, still a part of that. We pray for God's blessings on him in his new ministry venture as he and his family embark clear across the country to go and train pastors at that great seminary. So we've restructured the podcast a bit. We're going to look at a different approach as moving forward. And launching us off today in the inaugural reworking of the Lifework Podcast is one of my colleagues here at Williams Baptist University. He is an alum of this school. He's a member of our faculty, the Right Reverend Dr. Michael Fox, or as he prefers to be called, Brother Mike. Welcome to the podcast. We're very glad to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back. It's good to be back at Williams. Year one down, starting
start
year
your
two.
Second year, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a good little transition into the school year that is upon us now.
You survived year one. Any looking back thinking, boy, I'm glad that's over, don't want to do that again kind of moments?
Absolutely. Technology is always going to be that. I feel like I've learned probably 10 online learning platforms, the online element that schools have.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So that was a tough part, honestly. It's not my favorite part of education,
Sure.
but it's helpful. It's necessary. It's not going away.
It's the world we live in now, isn't it?
It is the world we live in.
So you're an alum, but you're also an Arkansas native. Is that right?
Yes.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Saline County. So a lot of people think Benton, and I was very close to Benton, but really I grew up west of Little Rock, north of Benton, in an area known colloquially as Moody Hollow.
Wow.
So if you, and for our Arkansas folks out there, if you know 430 cuts north and south across Little Rock, there is a Colonel Glenn exit. And growing up, there wasn't much at that exit. Now there are dealerships, Subaru dealership, for instance, restaurants, things like that.
No, right where it is.
Yeah, so you can get off at Colonel Glenn, go west, and I grew up. You keep going west. You cross County Line Road from Pulaski County into Saline County. A good 25, 30 minutes from that exit, I grew up in a little cabin on a dirt road.
A cabin.
Yes, in an area known as Moody Hollow. Past the Ferndale area west of Little Rock.
So when you say cabin, electricity, plumbing?
Eventually, yeah. Eventually,
wow.
we had those things. So, yeah.
But it didn't start off that way.
Didn't start off that way.
Wow.
Just a little touch about me. I do a little bit of my testimony in some of the churches around here.
Sure.
But my birth father passed away when I was 2.
Wow.
So my mom was a very young widow, and not long after that, she got hit by a drunk driver. And then my stepfather entered the picture when I was about 4 or 5-ish, and they were just kind of both coming from situations trying to put their lives back together. He was a Vietnam veteran, and experienced some heartache overseas and some heartache back home. And they met. They built a little cabin out in no man's land, Moody Hollow, Arkansas, which is not a real name of any town. That's the local name for it. And for a while there, that looked like no electricity, and for a few years there, that did in fact look like an outhouse out back. And one thing after another. Fortunately, it didn't stay that way the whole time.
Sure.
But I suppose technically I am a Saline County, Ouachita Foothills hillbilly from Central Arkansas, and proud of it.
Well, good for you. We're glad you're here.
Yes, sir.
And we're glad the Lord providentially orchestrated the events of your life to eventually bring you here as a student. you went out in the big bad world and made your way and did some things, accomplished some things, and now he's called you back. And one of the things he is graciously blessed the university with, and by extension with you, are some funds that have endowed a professorship. So you now occupy, let me get this straight, the Dr. Thomas O. Jones Professorship of Faith and Vocation. And part of that esteemed position is you get to dabble in, think through, and work around things related to the Bible, theology, and a biblical understanding of work. And we're going to get into the more biblical side of this in our second podcast together. But for this one, instead of talking to Dr. Fox, I just want to talk to Brother Mike.
Yes.
And I want to talk about your own journey in work, your own work experiences, your own sense of how you came to understand your own personal calling in vocation and work. So let's just start off with, do you remember what the very first job that you ever had was that actually paid you money for the job?
Sure. And I'll try to skip past some of the kid going around knocking on doors, finding things to do stuff. When I was a teenager, I worked at a horticultural place in Little Rock, really, west of Little Rock, way out on Lawson Road. Basically, a glorified way of saying a tree farm and a plant farm.
Wow.
And
so why aren't you helping out on the farm here? Apparently, you've got some skills we didn't know about. I'm learning some things here.
Good question. I'm going to dodge that question for now.
Okay.
We can't all do everything, right?
Sure.
Do everything. And that was my first job where I went, I applied, I talked to someone, I got hired. I had 40 hours a week to work, summers and Christmas breaks.
Okay.
River Valley Horticultural, let's see, probably still going out on Lawson Road and west of Little Rock there. But, teenager, minimum wage. I think that was $4.15, maybe $4.25 at the time. Right. I don't remember. All the money in the world to me. And then on top of that, I kind of, my dad did remodeling growing up. My parents were musicians. They gigged around Little Rock. They actually played music and got paid for it in a very tough music scene.
Okay. Are you a musician?
I have probably hurt some ears in churches before.
Okay.
I love guitar. I love bass. I love music.
Okay.
But
not your calling.
Not my calling. I wanted it to be, but it's not.
Me too.
Yeah.
I tease people when I talk about my story. Like, I wanted to be in a country western band. My mother wanted me to be a dentist. Neither one of us got what we wanted, so here we are.
Yes.
So as you reflect back on that first job and then maybe some jobs that came after, looking back now with the hindsight that you have, how do you see God working in those work experiences and teaching you some things about who you are, maybe who He is, and how those two intersect in the context of work?
Sure. Looking back, we have new eyes, right? At the time, I worked hard, I got paid, and I appreciated having those opportunities. Looking back, though, I definitely see the pedagogy. Big
so
fancy.
For our listeners, what is a pedagogy? Is that a motorcycle, a bike? What is a pedagogy?
Yes, so it's become one of my favorite words, and it is a fancy word. But pedagogy is basically how an individual teaches, why they teach, what's their style, what are they trying to accomplish.
Okay, there you go.
So I look at all life as pedagogy now. God is a teacher, and He's teaching us, and He's bringing us into new areas, new skills. He's developing us. He's growing us in the Spirit. Yeah. And I look back and I definitely see God at work in my life, learning to work hard, learning to, my favorite part of the Bible is the wisdom literature. I love the wisdom literature.
Well, I want to get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. So looking back, I look at those things through those eyes now. Okay. That God was at work. He is provident. He had plans for me before I knew Him, before I was even a dedicated Christian. I think I was a believer before I was a dedicated Christian. But yeah, I definitely, looking back, I see God has used all my experiences and as preparation.
God wastes no life experience, does he?
Good way to put it.
Yeah.
Great way to put it.
Wish it was original with me, but it wasn't. It's from a mentor of mine. Okay, so you go through those young adult, adolescent work experiences, probably learning things like showing up on time, doing what you're asked to do, following instructions.
Yes,
things
listening.
Yeah. And then you begin to move on and growing, and we think about getting into college, think about Williams and our Williams program and everything we're trying to do here with theology of work and as a work university kinds of things, all of that going on. How has God, in those previous work experiences, been preparing you for this work experience? I believe it's true. God wastes no life experience. Even working in greenhouses, working horticulturally, for me, working and sweeping out construction websites and digging ditches, literally, and reflecting back on all that. How have those work experiences prepared you, taught you, been pedagogical, institutional expressions in your life to do the work you're doing now?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, it's a very fun question because it allows me to look back on some very special moments in my life. So I was married when I was 18, and my wife, Rachel, was 19. And this is just part of our testimony. I think you know some of this. I've mentioned it even in chapel here. I mentioned it in classes. I mentioned it in churches around here. We were a couple hedonists for the first couple years of our marriage. Rachel would tell you she was an agnostic. She had seen some very ugly things in church that had pushed her to a place, maybe not to be so certain to say, I don't believe at all, but I don't even know how you can believe that true agnosticism. And I was a very reluctant Christian. Won't get into all that. I knew the truth. I had turned to the Lord, but I had never been discipled. I had never been to church regularly, things like that. So we found each other. We came out of some tough situations, both of us. Sure. And we were just doing life together. And I'll speed through this a little bit for time's sake, but a minister in Little Rock, Jeff, invaded our lives. Wow. He showed up. I was working at a coffee shop in Little Rock. I was outside on a smoke break reading a book, and Jeff comes up and says, "What are you reading?" And I looked up, and I knew him as a regular. Didn't know his name was Jeff yet, and I told him, and he said, "Oh yeah, that." He said that book reminds me of a lot of things in the book of Job. Have you ever read the book of Job? And I said, "Yeah, actually, I have read it, but I can't say that I understood what on earth is happening in that book." And through all that, he invites me to a Bible study. I can't go, so he says, "When is your lunch break? I'll meet you here." And so he invaded my life with the things of God, began to disciple me, began to teach me on my lunch break. Then there are three of us meeting eventually. And then through all that, Rachel and I end up going to church. She later gets saved. I got to baptize her at Hebron Baptist Church right there in Little Rock. Just so awesome. And all that's to say, very early, once we got in church, it's like God just started moving incredibly fast, scary fast. I receive a call to ministry. I just know I'm supposed to be preaching. I'm supposed to be teaching. It just happens fast. So here's what I'm getting at.
Okay.
From the very beginning, we get in church. A lot of people, ministers who had their own businesses, took me under their wing. I started working, I'll try to leave these slightly anonymous, but with a guy, I'll just call him Brother Stan, west of Little Rock, out in the Ferndale area west of Little Rock. Had a construction crew.
That wasn't me.
That wasn't you. A different Brother Stan.
There you go.
So in a way, I was really blessed. I didn't know it was any different out there than this. He impacted people's lives with his construction business. Okay. Framing houses, roofing houses, digging ditches, pouring concrete, pouring footings, whatever it may be, building concrete retaining walls. He was always bringing people in, teaching them new skills, discipling people, mentoring people. And on top of all that, he was a bivocational pastor. Rachel and I joined Hebron Baptist Church. And at the time, another brother here, Brother Tim, was a member of that church. Pastor Mike Gilchrist was the pastor. Although he later left, he went down to Texas. He needed to be closer to his parents, and the Lord worked all that out. But I was blessed in this way, too. There was a lay minister there, Brother Tim. He's still a pastor in the North Little Rock side down there. Pastors a church across the river. But he took me under his wing. He had a local concrete business, well-known guy, an honest guy, worked hard, yeah.
So a couple of things here. Sorry to interrupt, but one, God intersected your life while you were at work.
Yes. Great way to put it.
And then two, God used godly men to begin discipling you while you are at work in the context of working.
Sometimes with a hammer in my hand. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think a lot of us, I shouldn't say a lot, let me speak. I think some of us often think of God intersecting our lives and being discipled in our faith, in our life, as events that occur at the church building.
Wow, yeah.
But I think for most of us, those divine intersections, even in the Bible, how many times do we see God showing up to people at their work? Whether it's Zechariah at the temple, whether it's the shepherds keeping watch over their flock by night, whether it's David being a shepherd. I mean, God intersecting people at their work. And then work becoming a context where they're growing and maturing in their faith. This is your testimony. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%. And that's why the things that are in the water at our school right now, they just really resonate with me. Yeah. You know, we want our students to see, hey, your work, it can be, it should be, it is going to be your ministry.
Now, you alluded a moment ago to a calling that, and I believe this is true, although as I continue my own personal journey and study in the theology of work and the theology of vocation, there's a lot of debate over, are we really called individually to a particular type of work? I think so, but we can get into a debate on that another time. You had a calling, a moment, a calling to a work, a purposeful calling from God to start the journey down the path that you're currently on.
Yes.
Why don't you tell our listeners about that?
Absolutely. Like I said, Rachel and I started going to church, and it's like every time we went, the lights were getting brighter about this Christian faith. We were understanding more. We were just soaking it up. We were dry sponges, and the church, the Bible, the teaching, the fellowship. These are the things that had been missing for both of us our whole lives. And very early in that process, I just began, now this is subjective, but I began to sense and feel and even imagine I'm supposed to be preparing and teaching and doing more and going on visitation and just serving in more than, I'm trying to think, more than casual ways, more than ordinary ways, really jumping in there. I began to talk to some folks about it, and they were praying about it. And I suppose I had an experience, really, one day at church, whatever the sermon was about, I just knew in my heart, there are those moments when we're supposed to get up and go forward sometimes. I know it's a very Baptist thing to say.
Yeah.
That is who we are. It is who I am. And it was one of those, man, I need to go up and pray with the pastor and say, I'm supposed to do ministry. I'm supposed to preach. And I did that. I went down that well-worn path that many preachers have been down. But yeah, God called me out, and that's really how I ended up getting up to Williams in the first place. I was getting to preach around Little Rock a little bit and teach and go on visitation at church at Hebron there with Brother Mike and Brother Tim, and teaching the youth sometimes and filling in at places, like I said, around church. And then one day, Mike Gilchrist comes to our home. We have a brand new baby at the time, James. He's 25 now. It's amazing how life works. 25 and in the Navy, but he came over and talked to us, and he said, "Look, if God's called you to vocational ministry, He's called you to prepare. And He gave me the hard truth that I needed to prepare more. Mm-hmm. That I may sound good and have a big heart and all that, but I needed some training. And He told me, you need to look at some places, but top of my list, you need to look at Williams Baptist.
So as we were preparing to start the podcast, you related an experience from Wedgwood Baptist Church about calling. So why don't you share with our listeners about that?
Absolutely. So if we can jump ahead in my own journey from coming to Williams, going to Midwestern, pastoring a couple churches along the way, or being pastored by them. I found myself at TCU, PhD program, probably the only evangelical in the entire program of 200 students in the divinity school.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I went to school at TCU a couple of classes back in my doctoral work.
Yeah. So Rachel and I and James and eventually Jonah, while we were down there, we really leaned into church. We needed it. And so we were at Wedgwood Baptist, where we found a church home and an awesome Sunday school class, and where I got to teach Sunday school, and Rachel got to do some women's ministry and lead some of those kind of things on occasion. One day, in the service, Brother Al Meredith, well known down there, and I think still pastor emeritus there.
He is.
He says to the church, packed house, pretty big church, he says, raise your hand if God's called you to ministry. And you look around, 10, 11, 12 hands go up out of hundreds and hundreds of people. And he did a very dramatic thing. He put his hand in his face and shook his head. And he says, oh, church, I've let you down. And then in a very Baptist way, he said, every hand in this building should be up right now. Wow. Everyone in here is called to ministry. I don't care if you're a school teacher, a carpenter, this, that, a pastor, a preacher. And it was a moment where a lot of things were really clear for me. And I have to say, I have stole that from him, and I've used it over and over. Where I previously taught in Oklahoma, I would ask students, we had a Old Testament survey, more or less. Maybe it was history and some theology of the Old Testament. But for all intents and purposes, Old Testament survey. I would ask students in there, get 40 students. I would say, raise your hand if you're one of our ministry students. And maybe 2 hands would go up with pride, and I don't mean that negatively. Pride.
Sure,
like,
sure.
oh, I'm one of those. And I would do the same thing. Oh, I failed you already. I should have already bumped into you and told you. You're all called to ministry. In fact, some of you will be in classrooms at a local school right down the street, right across the county, and you'll do more ministry than I ever could in a church. And then the question marks are just forming above their head. Yeah. And so, yes, that was a moment where not only did something land differently than it had when Brother Al did that, I've also stole that from him, and I've tried to make it my own.
There's a quote that I recently came across that kind of leans into that I think is a good way to sort of bring this podcast to a conclusion. Wish it was original with me. It's not. It's from Gene Veith. Taking a theological biblical concept, he said, the priesthood of all believers did not make everyone into church workers. Rather, it turned every kind of work into a sacred calling.
Praise the Lord, yes.
Yeah. And I think that is a good word of encouragement for our listeners as we wrap this up, in that if you are a follower of Jesus, if you are a believer in the gospel of Jesus Christ, you have a calling. It may not be to a pulpit. It may not be necessarily to be a missionary on the mission field as we would normally think of it, but you have a calling. Go into the marketplace, embrace that calling, and serve the Lord in that ministry wherever and however He's prepared you to do that.
Absolutely. And to give a last word on that, at least from my perspective here, I'm here because people saw their businesses as ministry.
Wow.
Because they used them that way. And because God used their efforts that way. So I'm very grateful that some men of God saw their work as vocation and ministry. I'm glad God used it. And honestly, I'm glad that at the very start of my own journey, that has, put me here in this place that I love so much, I'm glad that I didn't really have an opportunity to know any different.
Good for you. Praise the Lord. What a great encouragement.